This is the Vivo X100 Ultra, and according to many of our channel's viewers, this is the best camera phone on the market, and this is our favorite, the Samsung S24 Ultra. And out of all our tests, the smartphone came out on top. Alright, let's compare these two smartphones and find out who the real king of photo and video is. Let's go!
Hey friends, this video was translated using a neural network, so the sound quality isn't the best. If you want to listen to the original sound from a smartphone and hear the audio recording test, just follow the link in the description to our original video.
Both smartphones are fully charged at 100% right now, and we'll see which one runs out of battery faster. So, we're continuing the shoot. I flipped the cameras, switched to horizontal mode, and now we're also testing video recording. On the front camera, 4K at 60 frames per second in landscape mode on both smartphones. This is what it looks like. We've got a beautiful park here, and our favorite spot where we go for a run. So the sunlight is lighting me up really well right now. And this is how it turns out for us. The camera is working if you're shooting against the light, like right here with the sun behind me.
I turned off the professional shooting on the S24 Ultra, and indeed, now Samsung Sky is even better defined than Vivo's. Thanks again to our viewer for the tip. Definitely in terms of stabilization, Samsung keeps the image steadier. Again, let's take a look at the background. Vivo shakes more.
I've just activated portrait video. Horizontal mode. Everything looks really beautiful to me. 4K at 30 frames per second on the Samsung, and accordingly, full HD at 30 frames per second on the Vivo X100.
In portrait mode, even in landscape orientation, Vivo has all the same issues as in vertical mode: shaking, jittering, and at times blurriness. During a run, the background objects shake a lot more than on the S24 Ultra. So when it comes to the cinematic mode, I definitely prefer Samsung. But friends, based on the results of testing the front camera, I can't say that I didn't like from Vivo's front camera looks. On the contrary, the 4K video quality is excellent, and the stabilization works well. I wouldn't really use the cinematic mode.
I just activated the professional mode. The picture got worse on the Samsung, but I hope the sound is recording better.
So guys, we're recording sound in really tough conditions. Here we have a busy road,
which is constantly driving in cars. Accordingly, the sound recording is happening.
Which smartphone does the best sound recording in such harsh conditions?
It's really interesting to listen. Right now, we have the front microphone activated on the Samsung S24 Ultra. The front microphone on the Vivo X100 Ultra isn't activated. I can't turn it on. I'm just setting it up now to capture the voice better. Just like that. Yeah, the level. The background noise is reduced, so everything should be recording well now, and the voice should come through clearly. And on the Samsung S24 Ultra, this is the front microphone. So, if we activate the rear microphone accordingly, this is how the Samsung S24 Ultra records sound to the rear microphone, and accordingly, this is how it records sound. If it's the omnidirectional microphone, I think the best option is the front microphone.
Vivo did a good job in regular sound recording mode. You can hear me even with cars passing right by. Road noise is not suppressed like with the Samsung, but we have no distortions of voice or sound. But with the strengthening of the voice, this very voice became too constrained. The S24 still sounds better in front microphone mode. And honestly, the whole feature of choosing the direction of recording is way better than noise cancellation, even if it's high quality. By the way, all the upcoming tests, I'm going to record with voice highlighting turned on, so you'll be able to evaluate its performance in a variety of conditions.
Alright, now let's test it out. The main camera module is 4K at 60 frames per second. Ultra-wide angle on both smartphones. The Chinese, they really love to place that. Ultra-wide lens facing down. I pushed the smartphone as far away from the tripod as possible, so that the tripod doesn't get in the shot. But I think it will still show up anyway. The same thing was true for Honor, and the same for Xiaomi.
Both images here look rich and bright. The only difference is in the white balance. Samsung's image has a redder tint, while Vivo's is more yellow. On stabilization, here, the X100 Ultra clearly holds up better. With Samsung, the background shakes more and there's noticeable blur. On switching to the forward view, here again, Vivo does a better job. The color of the sunset is more saturated. There is less glare from the sun. We test the stabilization. Vivo again holds up better.
Alright, now I'm shooting myself. 1x, 4K, 60 frames per second. How do cameras actually work? We're filming ourselves. We still have it. The sun is setting, and the lighting is just perfect right now. I don't think there should be any problems.
I'd say the wide-angle shots look similar on both smartphones, and both images look good, but still, in my opinion, the quality is better on the Vivo.
Now, let's test stabilization. Let's go the main camera module at 4K, 60 frames per second.
The stabilization also worked almost the same, but with Samsung, there's a bit more noticeable blur in the background. I'm flipping the camera. Here, at first glance, the images look almost identical again. Vivo is lighter, while Samsung is darker. But besides that, the quality is noticeably better. The video is from the Vivo, there's better detail and clarity, both for distant and close-up objects, whether it's grass or a path. But we'll take a closer look at the image quality from all the lenses later, in more detail. For now, let's take a quick run-through. Vivo again has better and smoother stabilization. With Samsung, the jelly effect is more noticeable, and it shakes the camera more. And for the most curious, stabilization test at 2x zoom. Here, Vivo is already shaking and blurring the image more, whether it's while walking or running.
And now, improved stabilization. Both smartphones shoot in 2.6K. Let's test it out.
In this mode, the picture is definitely better. With Vivo and Samsung, it's very noisy and overexposed. In my memory, anyway, the x100 Ultra is the first smartphone where, in maximum stabilization mode, the picture remains of decent quality with a good dynamic range. When shooting video forward, the S24 Ultra holds steadier, but the video quality is just terrible, significantly worse than the Vivo.
Both smartphones can shoot at 20x zoom. Now let's see who will do better.
Vivo has 50 megapixel ultra-wide lens, a 50 megapixel main camera, and a 200 megapixel telephoto lens with 3.7x optical zoom. We're starting the shoot with the ultra-wide lens at 0.6x. The S24 Ultra does keep the details a bit better, even though the difference is pretty small. 1x wide-angle lens. Once again, Samsung has better detail. The letters look clearer and more cohesive. 2x digital zoom on both smartphones. On closer inspection it looks weak, but with Samsung, you can at least make out the word track. Switching to the telephoto lenses, 3.7x on Vivo and 3x on Samsung. And obviously, the first one has a better picture quality than the S24 Ultra. 5x optical zoom on Samsung and digital on Vivo. Here, the S24 has a clearer and higher quality image. We have digital 10x and further zooms on both smartphones. And what do we have here? At both 15x and 20x zoom, Samsung produces a clearer and more detailed image with readable text. On the Vivo, it's readable too, but it's really blurry, just like everything else. I often see comments asking why you would even use maximum zoom. Well, for example, if you went to see your kids perform at school and there weren't any good spots near the stage. Here's another totally realistic scenario where maximum zoom can really help you out. And here, I would definitely recommend it, Samsung.
And this is how portrait works on the main camera block at 1x.
It's really interesting to see how the girls behind me are in focus, and how the smartphone is handling that.
Let's see if the camera can catch them. Right now, I'm catching up to the sun and I'm walking like this, looking around. I'm curious to see how the smartphone will perform, whether it clearly highlights my face or if it will catch the sun's face instead. Sun, look at the camera, there you go. This is how I walk sideways, turning away. I wonder if it's normal. About the focus on me. Cinematic effect pin, at 30 frames per second. Both smartphones.
And, accordingly, whether smartphones detect two faces in a frame or not.
It'll be really interesting to see how the phone blurs the background. For me, for example, in focus.
They're not in focus anymore. The blur is about a 5 out of 10.
Only Vivo managed to handle two people in the frame. Samsung completely blurred out my lovely wife. As for the wires in this mode, Vivo did pretty well here. The focus does not lose, nor do the frames. But when flying around, the picture jerks unpleasantly. You have to shoot carefully. Samsung, as always, pleases us with, in quotes, loss of frames with such wiring. The focus also struggled to catch up in some spot. Once again, after a ton of updates, the S24 Ultra fails this test. Alas, The advice from the comments about disabling automatic lens switching in Camera Assistant did not help us. Friends, if you have any more ideas on how to save Samsung from frame loss in this mode, drop them in the comments. Alright, let's read on.
And here's the footage. 8K. 30 frames per second, both smartphones.
They can shoot this. It's been a while since we've had a little smartphone and I'll review that. Just like Samsung can shoot 8K. Video at 30 frames per second.
Friends, make sure to drop a comment about the quality. The 8K pictures, they look better.
It's all just marketing. It'll be interesting to read.
Well, now let's take a quick look around. 8K, 30 frames per second. Let's go.
The stabilization is smoother on the Samsung, while the Vivo's background shakes noticeably more. But overall, the 8K looks good on both smartphones. Samsung only has a better view of the sky, while his is a bit overexposed when switching to the view forward. Here again, the new model has a darker 24 video, but there's no overexposure like that. As for stabilization, it's clear that Samsung holds up better here too.
Right now, we're shooting an 8K picture at 30 frames per second on both smartphones. We have a stunning sunset, and let's see how the picture will look in the end.
I like the sunset on both, but when it comes to details, like the grass, the Vivo looks better.
We're now activating HDR10 Plus on the Samsung S24 Ultra, and on the Vivo x100 Ultra will turn on Dolby Vision.
HDR is an image with a wide dynamic range. It allows us to make the most of the color capabilities of the captured video or photo without losing details and quality. HDR technology. We've got different ones here. The difference between Dolby Vision and HDR10 Plus lies in color depth and the number of colors displayed. In this sense, Dolby technology is more advanced, 12 bits and 68 billion colors, compared to 10 bits and 1 billion colors with HDR10 Plus. In practice, we get two quite different results, which need to be painted differently and which, after post-processing, will look completely different from each other. And for example, this is what the color rendering of Vivo 8K looks like, in contrast with Dolby Vision. And this is what 8K looks like on Samsung versus HDR10 Plus. Friends, be sure to leave a comment about which shots you like more. Vivo lets us shoot video in a logarithmic profile, which means you get a desaturated image that you can color to your taste with almost no loss in quality. Here's how it looks compared to regular video.
Slow motion test of the girl. They're just gonna fly now. They on the swings. All right, let's go. .240 frames per second. Samsung shoots well, but on the Vivo, my camera froze and now every time I click it, this kind of thing is happening. Interesting. I'm encountering this. There's nothing like this on the Samsung. 240 frames per second, full HD, all okay. No problems at all.
When recording at 240 frames per second in Full HD Vivo, it crashed out of the camera on me several times, and I'll talk more about this in the conclusions, in more detail. As for the image quality, the new model does look a bit better.
Both smartphones shoot time-lapse in 4K at 30 frames per second, but the Vivo has a noticeable slight advantage in detail and image quality.
Night has fallen, and now we're going to test it out. Let's see what our smartphones can do in low light conditions.
So, gotten really dark now. The wind has picked up a bit here. And like this.
Smartphones work in complete darkness. Well, there are literally a few flashlights shining here.
And this is how we're testing the cameras. 4K, 30 frames per second.
The front camera. So, which smartphone will perform better?
In low light, the front camera is a bad choice for filming yourself. Both videos look bad, noisy, and blurry. And if you add action, it all doubles down.
Alright, now we're doing portrait video in complete darkness.
The street light shines very brightly. So this is how 4K at 30 frames per second works on
Samsung S24 Ultra and Full HD at 30 frames per second on Vivo.
the x100 Ultra. This is how the portrait mode works for us.
Portrait video looks acceptable with a bright flashlight, even better on Vivo than Samsung. But as soon as you step away from the light, it's a nightmare again. And in the stabilization test, it got even worse again.
So now let's talk about the ultra-wide lens. There's not much light here on me. These tall street lights are literally the only thing lighting me up. Here we have a 4-lane road, 2 lanes going one way and 2 the other. We're also listening to how it records sound. Let's take a look at the image quality. How do these smartphones even work on an ultra-wide camera in low light conditions?
The situation here is better than on the front camera. There's definitely less noise. The video is clearer. But I still wouldn't call this picture high quality. Both cameras struggle with artificial light, and when it comes to color, the only difference is in the white balance. Action shots look pretty bad on both cameras. I'm moving the camera forward, and it's all bad here. The picture floats and twitches, and when you run it turns into a house. Well, maybe it'll be better on the wide-angle lens.
And now we're shooting with the main lens. 4K at 30 frames per second. Here, of course, there aren't that many headlights, but basically. And here the big headlights are lighting me up. And here, these little street lights are to provide some light. It might be a decent picture, but that's not for sure.
Overall, the result is, of course, better than on the ultra-wide camera, and even more so on the front camera. In terms of color rendering, Samsung is richer, Vivo is lighter and paler, but its picture, in my opinion, is quite workable.
And now, I think we can take a quick walk down the road. The lighting here is really bad. Let's take a look.
Vivo's stabilization worked well. Samsung's is much stronger. The background twitches. This is especially noticeable on the lantern. I'm flipping the camera around, and the view ahead looks better to me on the x100 Ultra. The picture is smoother and has better detail. And during a run, Samsung also falls short compared to the new model. With a 2x zoom, once again, Vivo performs better, while the S24 Ultra is all over the place.
The main camera module. 4K at 30 frames per second in complete darkness. So it's already nighttime. And accordingly 4K. Cinematic mode on the Vivo X100 Ultra, and portrait video with a background blur effect on the Samsung S24 Ultra. It's really beautiful out there today. That full moon looks absolutely amazing.
In portrait mode, both smartphones work well, but with their own shortcomings. With Vivo, the algorithm smoothed out the skin too much, making it look unnatural and blurry. In some spots, the processing is really jarring. Samsung is fine with details, but here again, there is some blur in places. And once again, there's a loss of frames if you move the camera around a bit. But when it comes to stabilization, the S24 Ultra holds steady.
.8K 30 frames per second. Both smartphones. Only the big, tall lamps are shining on me.
It's really interesting to see how all of this will turn out.
It's beautiful behind me. I think there should be some reflections. I wonder how they.
The camera will capture it, whether it will work or not. This is how it all looks.
In low light, the 8K color reproduction looks better on Samsung, but when it comes to shooting quality, Vivo definitely takes the win, especially since the S24 has some focus issues in places. But the stabilization works better here on Samsung. I'm flipping the camera around, capturing everything around me, and here, I'll point out the higher quality again. Pictures from Vivo, better detail, less noise, but when it comes to stabilization, especially while running, the S24 Ultra performs better.
Now we're going to test the video recording in low light conditions.
On the ultra-wide, Vivo definitely has a better picture. There's less noise here, and the lights don't blend together like they do on Samsung. At the wide-angle lens, the x100 Ultra again has less noise. However, the text is considered better on Samsung. On the new model, it looks more distorted and blurry. 2x zoom looks bad on both phones, but the S24 Ultra does a better job with the light source. Switching to the telephoto lens, and here, Vivo has retained details better. Samsung has smoothed out the noise too much and completely blurred the sign. At 5x zoom on the S24 Ultra, an obvious advantage. Still, the optical zoom does its job. 10x zoom. Here, the sign on Samsung does look clearer after all. It has less distortion and noise at the edges. Overall, the picture is noisier, especially on the S24 Ultra. 15x zoom. And once again, the sign on Samsung is more readable and clearer. But again, in the video, overall, it has more noise than Vivo. And the last one, the 20x zoom. And it's the same situation again. The overall picture on the S24 Ultra is noisier, but the sign looks better. We're done with the video test. Now let's move on to the photo mode. Since my family and I travel often, having beautiful and high-quality landscape photos is really important to me. And here, of course, I would choose Vivo. Whether it's the ultra-wide lens or the main camera, the shots from it are richer, more contrasted, and clearly better in quality. I also took a photo with zoom, for example, and whether it's a 2x zoom or 5x zoom, the situation doesn't change. And of course, the photos from the x100 Ultra look even better. Now, let's move from beautiful photos of everything around to beautiful photos of ourselves. Vivo has a 50-megapixel front camera with an aperture of f2.5. Samsung has a 12-megapixel camera with an aperture of f2.2. And with Vivo, the faces turn out way too unnatural. The problem lies in the makeup filter that's turned on by default. The wild skin processing really stands out. The algorithm smoothed it out way too much and even removed shadows from the face in some places. Samsung has a more natural skin tone, and the detail is better. And here's how the portrait mode for selfies works on the Vivo. Now we're taking portrait photos. The photos taken with the main camera look great, saturated, bright, and there are no serious problems with the blur border. Although there are some minor flaws in the hair on both smartphones, the only thing is that in portrait mode Vivo overpaints the colors quite a bit. This is especially noticeable in this photo on my daughter's shirt. It's definitely a filter that not everyone will appreciate. To be honest, another thing is that Vivo makes her skin look much lighter than it actually is. Here is another interesting example of how the x100 Ultra algorithms work. While Samsung retained the highlights of the water in the Vivo's background, it simply blurred them out in terms of the overall portrait. Personally, I prefer Samsung's colors, but that's definitely a matter of taste. We also tested portrait shots against the light. And here are the results we got.
Hey friends, we've come to this cafe to test out the food mode and our favorite spoon and fork test.
Today, we only have a dessert and some drinks, but that's enough for our comparison. And I can say that both smartphones made it tasty. Here, the choice of a winner really depends on your preferences. In the spoon fork test, we focus all our attention, as you might have guessed, on forks and spoons to see whether the algorithms will blur the background correctly, or blur our devices. And then Vivo immediately fails the test, completely removing the spoon and adding the background. In the second photo, everything is much better, the spoon is in place. But Samsung has blurred it to pieces here. Third photo, and once again, both smartphones failed. I'd like to highlight the huge variety of photo modes on the Vivo. Everything looks interesting, and you can achieve some really cool results. Plus, the smartphone constantly throws out tips on what each mode is for and how to get the best shot. And there are a ton of tutorials, not just for the main camera, but also for selfies. An incredible number of templates for a beautiful shot. Different recommended poses with outlines for a better shot. Overall, there's a huge potential for great photos. For that, a special like. So, let's run through all the features of the main camera setup.
Now we're going to test out a really cool mode called Landscape Architecture. The main thing about this mode is that the object we have here, so the object in this rectangle is in focus. Everything else is out of focus, and you can change this rectangle like this. I want to take a shot right now so that my coffee is in focus along with the pancakes. Are delicious ones. Vivo has a really cool feature. When we tap once to zoom in, like this for example, on the focal length, it zooms in. This is how we do it. Goes back. For example, next we make the focal length 5. Let's take a photo. And now, if I press 5 again, it increases to accordingly. Nothing like this is implemented on Samsung, for example. Vivo has a huge number of cool ones like this. Effects. As you can see, it gives tips on how to shoot better, so we can change the image styles. Now I've turned off the styles, so here you can also touch up the face, you can add some color, smooth it out, change the skin tone, you can do whitening and make corrections. So it makes the face look different, it kind of squeezes a short face to make it look narrower. This is just unreal. I can't imagine how this works, if it actually works. There are simply an unreal number of selfies crawling around. I just can't imagine any posts at all. There's just some kind of space here. So what is this, right? That is, he shows me some pose, how I need to stand to take such a cool photo. In general, there are just an unbelievable number of different cool features.
The smartphone also has a lot of different types of bokeh with various blur styles. Everything is interesting. Again, there's a lot of room for experimentation. Of course, there's its own implementation here. Low shutter speed photos. Snapshot mode works like this. You have moving objects, people, animals in the frame, and the camera catches them right in motion. And here, it works great, and the result is impressive. Then you can easily check it out this way. For comparison, this is the result we get on the Samsung with low shutter speed photos. The S24 Ultra also has a high-speed shooting mode, but even here, the results fall short. Photo with Vivo.
Vivo has also created a really cool mode. It's like a little icon, kind of like a lens. So here you can choose different focal lengths. 24 millimeters, 35 millimeters, 50, classic 50, natural 50, 85, humanistic 85 portrait, and 100. Here's my beautiful daughter. I'm gonna take a photo now. But there's also this really cool thing. When we click here, this interesting software, environment pops up. I don't know, it feels like it's implemented with some kind of camera.
And in this interface, all the necessary settings are available. Filters, exposure, bokeh, shutter speed, focal length, HDR. So, if you love more professional photography, then this mode is definitely for you. There's an interesting mode for night shooting too.
The Vivo X100 Ultra has a really cool pulse mode for the roads. This is how beautiful it is. It happens with blurring. You can take some really awesome photos.
Both smartphones let us take raw photos, meaning photos without compression. We can freely tweak the color correction without worrying about quality, getting richer and more interesting results, adding contrast, and bringing out the sky and clouds. And here are the results we got when comparing this mode with on the Vivo and the S24 Ultra. We're taking macro shots. Vivo has a super macro icon and it works really well. In all the shots, the quality is definitely better than Samsung's. The S24 Ultra doesn't have a separate macro mode, so in this test, it almost always ends up falling short. Let's take a look at the zoom quality. We start with the ultra-wide lens at 0.6x on both smartphones. Here it's a bit better. The S24 Ultra looks better in terms of detail. The picture on the Vivo is a bit more blurry, switching to 1x zoom, wide-angle lens. And here, on the contrary, the new model has preserved more details. 2x digital zoom. And once again, the x100 Ultra performed better. The text is clearer, all the letters are intact, but the text got a bit blurry on the Samsung. Let's test the telephoto lens. 3.7x on the Vivo, 3x on the S24. And here the telephoto lens wins 100% for the new product. The detail is better, there's way less noise, and the sign is easier to read. The 5x zoom on the Samsung is optical, while the Vivo uses digital zoom, but the optics don't really give any advantage here. S24 Ultra, the result turned out to be very similar. At 10x zoom, the x100 Ultra again looks better in terms of detail. We're turning on the 30x zoom. Here both smartphones are boosting quality thanks to their algorithms, but the Vivo distorts it a bit too much. Details. However, the overall quality of the photo is still higher, and we can rest assured you can read the signs and labels, which can't be said about the results from Samsung and the maximum 100x zoom. Here, the x100 Ultra again has slightly better image clarity, but it didn't preserve the text any better. Samsung. I also took a 50 megapixel photo, and the picture on the Vivo turned out clearer and more detailed, plus there's less noise. And we can also take 200 megapixel photos on both smartphones. The Vivo has a telephoto lens, while the Samsung has a main camera. It's gotten dark, and we're heading out for a nighttime photo hunt for some beautiful shots. Vivo performs better with the ultra-wide angle lens. I really like the quality here. The photos, skin tone, performance with light bulbs, and the sky. With Samsung, everything has turned yellow. The light bulbs look bad, and the gradient in the sky is gone. But now there's some kind of light halo around the tree crowns. The second photo, and again Vivo. Personally, I like it more. The color of the sky is nicer, more vibrant, and the clouds look better. And the overall quality, the photo, is definitely better. In the third photo, we have a very different sky, and here in terms of color it's already a matter of your personal taste. But if we talk about quality, then Vivo again looks better on a wide-angle lens. Vivo has better contrast saturation, better preserved details, and again, better looks. Clouds also tested color rendition at other sizes. The photo style of the lens makes the sky look way better in the Vivo, with richer saturation and a more refined performance with the lights. I'm not even talking about the quality here. Photo, taken with 5x zoom. Samsung has a lot of dark areas. The water and trees look worse than on Vivo. We're going to test portrait photography on these smartphones now. I really like the portrait photography on the Vivo because when I activate portrait mode, this cool flashlight turns on right away. Here's how it looks. The Vivo performed really well. The detail is better, there's less noise, and I give a thumbs up for the lighting. The first portrait photo from both smartphones looks great, and even with the blurring border along the hair, there are no significant problems here. The photo against the light didn't turn out great. Vivo's is a little sharper, but both shots are still overexposed. Plus, Vivo even recolored my shirt. Apparently, some kind of filter is added to portrait mode. Samsung has more correct colors, but the quality is poor. The photo is pretty bad. Let's take a look at zoom quality in low light and get started. 12 megapixel photos. We're starting, as always, with the ultra-wide 0.6x on both smartphones. So far, the result is more or less the same. 1x wide-angle lens. Again, the result is similar, but Vivo's sign is more overexposed. Samsung's details and colors are better preserved. 2x digital zoom, there is no difference in quality here, but the X100 Ultra has preserved the colors better. We turn on the 3.7x telephoto lens for Vivo, 3x for Samsung. Here, even without zooming in, you can see how much better the new product's photography turned out. There's way less noise, and all the details from the house to the grass look better. But even upon closer inspection, we can really see just how much better the telephoto lens performs in low light on the Vivo. Let's turn on the 5x zoom. And once again, even with the naked eye, we can see the advantage of the Vivo, even though Samsung is using optical zoom here while the X100 Ultra is using digital zoom. Vivo has way less noise and better detail. 10x zoom, the Vivo struggled with bright signs, but once again, it outperformed the competition in quality and detail. Photos. 30x zoom. Once again, the X100 Ultra performs better, again with less noise and better detail preservation. And here, it definitely handled the signs better. Samsung does better, but at 100x zoom, still couldn't beat the S24 Ultra. We also couldn't skip testing the 50 megapixel photo. Here, the Vivo did better. Samsung, less noise. The light sources and signs look better.
We have an unbelievably beautiful moon. Now we're going to test this mode on the Vivo X100 Ultra. Let's go.
In this mode, I took a lot of photos with different lenses at various zoom levels. Vivo, starting from the wide-angle lens, shows us a beautiful moon, but on Samsung, and at 5x zoom, and at 10x zoom, it is not really visible. Only at 30x zoom does the S24 Ultra give us a full moon. Looks cool, but obviously not up to par with Vivo. Of course, this is more about a competition of algorithms rather than lenses, who can paint that moon more beautifully. But as users, you're interested in the final result. Here's another shot in astrophotography mode. Zoom in. With Vivo, the detail and quality feel better, but around the satellite, there's some kind of pixel halo forming. Samsung doesn't have that. And at maximum 30x zoom, it's basically the same thing.
Night has fallen, and Vivo has created this really cool app called Astrophoto. When we point it at the sky, here's what happens. So, I'm going to try to take a shot now. We don't have a similar mode on Samsung, and accordingly, we can take photos either like this. So, we're setting it up now. It automatically thinks that a 2-second exposure is enough, and here's the photo we got. But actually, thanks to artificial intelligence, it enhances the image. But, of course, the moon isn't as beautiful as what we can capture here. Let's go to Vivo. In either Pro mode, here we can actually take a picture right away, and we can shoot in RAW. So, we're setting the exposure to 4 seconds. And let's give it a try. On the Samsung S24 Ultra, we have a night mode, and we're going to test it out right now. It understands that we need to shoot for 8 seconds, so let's give it a shot now. I'm pressing the shutter, and let's see how Samsung performs right now. Will we get something similar on Samsung? A similar picture to what we get on Vivo. Let's move on. And here's the beauty we ended up with. And here, by the way, unfortunately, Astrophoto works only at one focal length, only at 1x. So, the picture turns out to be pretty much the same as what we got on Samsung.
Both smartphones are equipped with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 processor, but Samsung has its custom version called the 4 Galaxy. It has a main core that's 90 MHz more powerful and a graphics processor that's 230 MHz more efficient. Despite that, the X100 Ultra scored higher in Antutu. Vivo outperforms the S24 Ultra in this test. The PWM at different brightness levels is pretty low on it. When it comes to Wi-Fi speed, Samsung is clearly picking up speed much better here. Vivo almost twice as fast for both upload and download. I should note, I tested them one at a time, not simultaneously, so they wouldn't interfere with each other's network.
So guys, I wrapped up the shoot. Today was a full day of shooting, and in the end, I have 36% left on the Samsung and 28% left on the Vivo.
Alright friends, let's wrap things up. Here I've got 16 gigabytes of RAM and a whole terabyte SSD storage. Now, let's talk about the pros of this smartphone. One of the definite pros I'd mention is the packaging. In the box with the smartphone, I found a cord, a power supply, and an excellent branded case. Nowadays, many flagship smartphones even come without a power supply, so I am 100% satisfied with this. And the first pro that I'd highlight, and in this smartphone, of course, it's all about the camera, photos, and portraits. Overall, the cameras here perform excellently. Photos in many tests and at many sizes, Vivo turned out better, including at night. Vivo has a simply gorgeous portrait mode and its quality, and a huge number of different features and settings. I really like the availability of different focal lengths in the camera, which are suitable for various situations. Portrait photography on this smartphone is simply different. It's like a whole different world. Well, Samsung doesn't give us anything like that. I have never encountered portrait photography in this kind of setup. All this evokes only positive emotions from shooting a portrait, and the smartphone itself will tell you what, where, and how to use it correctly. A beautiful result is guaranteed. I especially like the portrait mode here, and there, you can choose poses. They let you take some really cool photos, so you just mimic that pose, and the smartphone analyzes the information, and at that moment, when your pose matches what's displayed on the smartphone, it takes the picture. And really, it's actually a really cool thing. The second thing that girls will really love is beauty. And here, with the help of this beauty, you can set up something simply unreal. Facial changes when we tested with my wife. Portrait photos and women's makeup look absolutely stunning. And indeed, the makeup looks like it was actually applied, which is actually, well, really cool. In terms of photo capabilities, this smartphone is much more interesting for girls than the Samsung S24 Ultra. Another interesting thing about the photo mode is that I like the snapshot function. All the photos turned out great, clear and rich. The mode works simply and conveniently. The mode that I also like in the Samsung S24 Ultra, it is also useful. Here, it's a separate mode. The food actually looks really appetizing on this smartphone. This is a feature I'm seeing for the first time, landscape and architecture. Here, you can choose the focus line, and when shooting in ultra-wide mode, you can remove distortions. Awesome! The next mode that I really like here is long exposure. There's a pulse effect here for roads. This photo is taken with a long exposure. You can also shoot waterfalls. We shot a small, tiny stream, just a little trickle. Again, really fast. I just walked up, and the exposure is set to 8 seconds. I got up and took the shot. An amazing photo with blurred water. There's no blurriness at all. Even though I was holding the phone, you can do that on the Samsung S24 Ultra 2. It's the same shot, but first, you need Expert RAW. It's separate software, but by the way, it installs right from the camera. Basically, there are no problems, but you need to add that in. That is, well, all this, of course, is done electronically, but in general, it's difficult to create this effect with a long exposure. On the Samsung S24 Ultra, you need a tripod. As for other camera features, I personally like the mode, astrophotography and moon photography. This is by far the coolest moon photo I've seen taken with a smartphone. There are a lot of little icons here, different ones. When we activate, for example, with the star pictogram, we see constellations. And you can actually take pictures of the constellations. You can point your smartphone at the sky and tell the kids about the different constellations. And it's really a cool thing. I really like the AI effect here. That is, this is portrait photography. When you photograph any object or person, thanks to artificial intelligence, it can refine the image and make beautiful gardens there, as if you were in winter. Overall, it's a really cool thing, but the only thing this function requires is internet. When it comes to shooting video, everything works pretty well. The stabilization is good, and the quality is solid too. It has 8K and Dolby Vision HDR. This smartphone allows you to shoot 4K at 120 frames per second, and it really does this at a pretty good level. The next mode I'd highlight, again, is time-lapse. And it's the first time I've seen a smartphone where you can set up time-lapse with any parameters you want. On this smartphone, time-lapse is shot in 4K at 30 frames per second. Some flagship phones still only shoot in these modes in full HD video, so thumbs up for Vivo. And since we're talking about video, I should mention the pretty high quality of the audio recording, including a pretty good voice isolation mode. The Vivo X100 Ultra also has a really good macro shooting mode, both for photos and videos. Overall, the macro photography works pretty well here. During macro photography, this 200 megapixel telephoto lens gets activated. I also really like the cinematic mode on this smartphone. The interface activates as if I'm shooting with some kind of professional camera. I'd also add that the screen is really nice. It not only performed excellently in the Shima test, but it was also just a pleasure to use. The Vivo X2 Ultra outperformed the Samsung S24 Ultra in Antutu. Even though the processors are the same, this one runs a bit faster. In real life, I definitely didn't notice that. I felt like both smartphones are working super fast. Well, maybe, in some games, Samsung is going to perform a bit worse than the Vivo. I wouldn't say this smartphone is mind-blowingly impressive, but compared to the S24 Ultra, it looks like a really strong competitor. So, friends, we've covered the pros. Now let's talk about the cons. The main downside for me was the software performance. It's a mystery to me why the camera crashed while shooting at 240 frames per second in full HD. The smartphone is new, the processor in Antutu was more powerful than the S24 Ultra. I don't have anything on it. In general, it's not clear. The same thing happened to me when shooting video in macro mode. I haven't seen anything like this on other smartphones yet. I only put Google Play here and I didn't put anything else here. That is, I didn't do any manipulations with this smartphone. Yes, I also installed Antutu and it sleeps with that. But to check the speed of Wi-Fi, and even with these minimum settings, I started having problems. I don't know what this is connected with. Maybe I have some problems with my smartphone. Friends, be sure to write in the comments who has been using this smartphone for a long time. What problems do you encounter in different applications? Because I ran into issues with the basic camera app, there might be similar issues in other apps. The next thing I didn't like was the cinematic mode, shooting video with background blur on the front camera. For me, the lack of full HD in portrait mode is definitely a drawback, and this mode itself looks on Vivo. It doesn't really recolor the picture, and it brightens the skin for an amateur. The next thing I'd point out is that the Wi-Fi seems pretty outdated here. Module. Samsung S24 Ultra, for example, in comparison with Vivo X100 Ultra, shows a result at least twice as good. I would also consider the lack of a professional mode when shooting with the front camera a downside. In that regard, I like the Pro mode on Samsung, and I don't get what's stopping Chinese manufacturers from adding it to their flagships. And a significant downside for many is the not-so-impressive battery. The phone is absolutely new. We filmed with it, and with the S24 Ultra. At the same time, the Samsung, which I've been using for quite a while now, held its charge better. So, guys, let's wrap things up. I really like this smartphone. This is a super creative, cool smartphone. This is a really good camera phone that's perfect for those who don't want to mess around with editing, video and photos in post-processing. Just get great results right away. Chic photo mode. Lots of possibilities for creativity. Very good device for photos, portraits, landscapes, and so on. But bugs, and to have to deal with all that for this kind of money, searching the internet for fixes and workarounds? I really don't want to, guys. But if you like this video, then be sure to like it, subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments which smartphone of these two top camera phones on the market you chose. And everyone, bye-bye.